plenty of firemen are showing up to try to save the day. Most experts say Ben Bernanke is the best person to solve this economic crisis because he studied the Great Depression.
Millions of unemployed besieged the government for relief. The United States faced one of the blackest periods in its history.
People who have not only studied the Depression, but fascism. But the firefighters with a plan. Is this where we're headed? Those who don't know history are destined to repeat it.
The only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
We have chosen hope over fear.
Then on March 4th, 1933, Herbert Hoover was succeeded as chief executive by Franklin Roosevelt. Under Roosevelt's leadership, the American people proved again that they could meet any challenge, that they could continue the march of progress inaugurated by their founding fathers.
There couldn't be anything more untrue than that. Founding fathers had very little to do with it. We're back with Robert Galately, Jonah Goldberg, R.J. Pastrito, and Amity Schlaze. We invite you to stay with us for the remaining of the hour, because this show, taken out of context, which it will be, is going to be able to turn upside down on its head, because we're talking about fascism. For people who think that fascism couldn't happen here in America, give me 5 minutes and we'll explain. But first I want to lay the groundwork here on the actual word that I'd say fascism because people understand that. Socialism, people understand that. They don't truly understand what Hillary Clinton had. I don't have the number here, the Hillary Clinton, it is SOT number 1. Could you play that? When she said this, I went, oh my gosh. Watch this.
I prefer the word progressive, which has a real American meaning, going back to the progressive era at the beginning of the 20th century. I consider myself a modern progressive, someone who believes strongly in individual rights and freedoms, who believes that we are better as a society when we're working together.
That is the key. We're better as a society when we're working together. America, do your homework on early 20th century American progressivism. It is Roosevelt and Wilson are the iconic faces of this. RJ, they took us off of the track of the founding of America where we didn't even look at our Constitution anymore. What happened?
Yeah, that's really the question, Glenn. You asked, how did we get here? How did we get in this situation where the Constitution seems to be, at best, an afterthought in all of these debates that we're having? And I got led on that quest myself. I was originally a scholar of the founding, did my original work on the founding, and figured out something went badly off the rails somewhere. And that's what really led me to investigate American history more deeply.
This is where it went off, American progressivism?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Woodrow Wilson's the first president to openly disparage the U.S. Constitution as no longer relevant and it needs to be chucked aside.
But he did that before he was elected president. He said, disregard the Declaration of Independence. It's not valid anymore. The Constitution, because this is really tied into evolution. I mean, I think I understand why progressives fight for evolution so much now, and that's because if evolution didn't happen, well, wait a minute, progressivism kind of falls apart, because what their claim was, and it's so discredited through the 20th century now, that the founders understood government as oppressive, but that'll never happen, because man and governments have evolved into a higher state. True or false?
No, that's true. And Glenn, what a lot of people don't realize is that Woodrow Wilson was a prolific academic and writer for decades before he entered into public life. And as a writer and an academic, he was very active in the progressive movement, which really went after directly the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence. And really the progressives were the first big government liberals in America.
Right. And this is why you see it today. This is why it's so important. When she says that, you have to understand what an early 20th century progressive meant. That they gave us income tax. They gave us the prohibition movement. When you see Barack Obama try to take money from charities and say no more income tax breaks for charities or religion or whatever, they're taking that down. That's because they're trying to get their fingers into that piece of the pie and bring everybody and point them to government. True or false?
I think that's a big part of it. Also, at a more basic level, there's something just very frustrating about this. Conservatives are asked to own their intellectual history, and that's fine, right? Conservatives were largely on the wrong side of the civil rights movement in the 1960s, and we should fess up to that. That's fine. But the progressives did some absolutely horrific things in this country. They were soaked to the bone, racist, eugenicist, imperialists. And yet Hillary Clinton can say, oh, I'm a progressive, and I go, oh, that sounds wonderful, because progressive just means good. Just means, oh, it's a progressive coffee shop, it must have good coffee. Imagine if Mike Huckabee had said in a debate, well, I'm not a conservative anymore, I'm a modern Confederate.
Right.
People would say, oh my God, doesn't understand the connotation of that word, but we have such amnesia about the actual...
Well, let's do this. First, you say that fascism couldn't happen here. Understand it is American progressivism that we're talking about. Couldn't happen here. RJ, in Indiana, what did the progressives do with the inmates? Do you remember? I read it from your book. The inmates in Indiana.
No, I think you probably read that from Jonah's book.
No, I think it was in your book. The progressives put a law in Indiana where they sterilized the inmates, especially those who were, nuts. No, it was in your book. I swear it was.
Well, the first eugenic sterilization laws in the United States.
Did you read your book? Go ahead.
The first eugenic sterilization laws in the world were in the United States.
Right.
The eugenics movement is really flowers in the United States under the progressives, and when Hitler picks up the ball in 1932, one famous American eugenicist said, these guys are beating us at our own game.
Okay. Now, real quick, because I'm up against the break, the other thing that I want to talk to you about, again, it couldn't happen here. Tell me how many people Woodrow Wilson had in for speaking out against his movement in war and everything else.
Woodrow Wilson had thousands of political prisoners. He had basically a fascistia, an army of goons who carried badges, beat people up in public, conducted mass arrests, 75,000 members of the American Protective League. 250,000 members of the American Protective League. He had propaganda agents who spread throughout the country. People were arrested for disparaging the president in their own homes. One man who made a documentary about the American Revolution that cast the British in a bad light was sentenced to 10 years in jail. Hundreds of newspapers were closed down. When Amity says, I understand when she says she prefers statism, I actually prefer statism too in most of these respects. But by any sort of, it looks like a duck, walks like a duck, talks like a duck, test of what looks like real fascism, what happened under Woodrow Wilson during World War I meets that test by a country mile.
America, please, you will understand history, you will understand where we're headed, you'll understand why you don't feel like there's a choice between the Republicans and the Democrats, especially last time with John McCain and Barack Obama. You're like, what's the difference between the two of them? Progressive, what happened in America with the progressive movement, as Hillary Clinton said, at the beginning of the 20th century, explains it all. More with the panel next.
Saturday, 2 months.